Iain, thanks for coming by the RCR ATX Studio Lounge today.
No problem.
You just published an article that talked about Apple's installment plan, the good, the bad, and the ugly for mobile operators.
Right.
Tell us about the article.
So, Apple obviously in their quarterly announcement or annual announcement, we want to call it, with the new iPhones, they talked about their upgrade plan, which to me was actually the big part of the announcement. To me, I think a lot of people expected iPhone 6s and all the rest, but the fact that Apple's getting now into the basically device financing and device distribution prior to the operators, I think it's going to have a big impact on them. Up until now, you've always bought your device from the operator. Up until a year or two ago, you had a contract, right? You paid for that. You got a discounted device, subsidized. And then we've been trained to go back every 18 months, 2 years, get a new one.
Right.
Carriers control that distribution. They have distributors, they have dealers, whatever. But really the manufacturers, Samsung, HTC, Apple, etc., have always had to go through the operators. So now you've got Apple saying, we've got stores, we've got online, we've got a relationship with the customer through iTunes. I'll do the installment plan. And it's actually interesting, when I was reading it, I'd expected Apple to say, we've got a lot of money in the bank, we're very profitable, we're putting some of that to work to finance these. Right. And they're not. They're using a bank. So they're not even financing this themselves, which will make even more money. But the point being now that I am an iPhone user and I have an AT&T account. I may never go to an AT&T store again. I can order from Apple, be fulfilled by Apple, go down to the Apple store, pick it up, and away I go. Well,
do you think you'll tell Apple that you're an AT&T customer? How will that interaction work?
You will. I think you'll go online and say, I'm an AT&T customer, so they get the right SIM.
Yep.
And then they'll say, okay, what's your phone number? And then transfer over the account. I mean, you can do that kind of today.
Right.
The difference, the last few iPhones I've had, I've ordered them from AT&T online and then gone to the local store to pick them up. It's 2 miles from my house, and it's convenient. So the relationship's still been with AT&T. The only other time I go to the store is when I've got a problem. So there's an issue with the bill that I can't get resolved online, or I know it's going to be faster in that store. I don't go there for accessories. I don't buy other services. So now the only reason I've been going is either a problem or to pick up that new phone.
Right.
Apple's just removed the need to pick up that new phone, because I go to the Apple store all the time. But I think more than that as well is now, you go to the Apple store, you go buy a new Mac, you go buy an iPad, you always buy a case, and you need another charger, and you need the little adapter for the display. Right? You never get out there with $1,000. You always get out there with $1,100. So you go buy an iPhone there now. Now they've got the Beats headphones sitting on the wall. You have to have a new case because all the new iPhones are different sizes. It goes on. So their upsell potential there, because you're going to come to that store, I think it's just increased.
Yeah, well, let's look at it by the numbers then. Okay, you talked about accessory sales. Do you have any idea what the average spend on incremental accessories are at an iPhone store versus a AT&T or Verizon store?
So, no, I don't. The actual number. What we did a study, and it's been a couple of years now, where we asked people where they bought their accessories. And what people did was they went to the mobile store to pick up the phone. About half of them were buying accessories in that store.
Yep.
Right? The other half left and drove around the corner to Best Buy, Target, Radio Shack. Well, they've gone now.
Right.
Whatever. Right.
No, they're all Sprint stores.
They're all Sprint stores, right? But they drove around and got, because they knew they'd go get cheaper, or they bought them. This was a few years back, so online was less. So I'm not going to tell you I know how many dollars are spent, but in terms of...
Well, let's use your own. I'll use my example, okay? Yeah. So when I got a new phone, I got one of those Gorilla Glass protectors. Yeah. That's $40. I got one of those cases. That was another $30-40. Okay. Yeah. If I go to an Apple store, I'm typically buying. I like those little flash hard drives.
Okay.
Those can be $200.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You buy the charger, that little charger. That thing's $50.
Yeah.
If you need a cord for your MacBook Air, those things can be $100 if you, depending on the wattage. So, you know, my sense is that the spend is pretty big either way, $70 to $100 per visit, excluding the more expensive stuff. Either way, so that will generate a lot more traffic to the Apple Store. So how about let's talk again about the numbers, the transaction. If Apple sells a phone that Citizens Bank, which is their banker, finances it, will they book all that revenue up front, and then how does that compare to the way Sprint and the carriers are booking their revenue?
Yeah, so the carriers do it in different ways. I mean, Sprint's spoken a lot about doing their own, spinning off the financing into a separate company, having a leasing company effectively, because they book it as capital expenditure, I think. So different carriers. I was actually, ironically, I was looking at AT&T and Verizon this morning, looking at their CapEx spend and trying to work out how much of that is actually for device, and you can't work it out. It's very difficult to work it out. So exactly the financial, how it's done, hard to say. The fact that Sprint is saying, we're going to pull this out, put it in another company so that you can see what our network operations, our wireless company looks like
versus the cost of a customer acquisition.
And then all that cash flow that we get from that, we can dedicate to network. It shows you that it's a pretty considerable drain. And I think there are some numbers out, I want to say $500 million or so for Sprint, and from what I remember. So we've got to say, AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile do the same thing. How they're actually accounting for it remains to be seen. So yeah, it's going to drop the, I would expect the revenues at the carrier to drop. I mean, if I'm paying $30 today on an installment plan to AT&T, that's revenue that's not going to go to them. It's going to go somewhere else. But they're also not carrying the cost of that device. They don't make much or any money on the devices. So profitability could look really good. Revenues could go down. My bigger concern, and this is good for the carrier, by the way, that little bit. My concern with the carrier is you look at any customer satisfaction, customer loyalty surveys from anybody, including us, Apple, Samsung, etc., always rank higher than all of the carriers. Verizon's always the best carrier, but Apple is up there with Mercedes, Lexus, Google. Netflix does really well.
Interesting.
Yeah. The carriers are the ones we love to hate, right? They're trying to provide the service, and providing a service is difficult. Apple, all you do is sell you a phone, give you a case, be nice.
Book a session at the Genius Bar.
Genius Bar.
It's a wonderful experience.
So now I go to Apple and get the whole phone and the service. They take care of the AT&T relationship. Now, do I love them more, and I've further distanced myself from AT&T? The carrier has just lost another connection with me. Now, the only reason I'm calling AT&T or Verizon or Sprint, T-Mobile, is for a problem. And that's not a good relationship.
Well, a couple more buckets of money, going back to buy the numbers. You mentioned in your $30 or $35 a month fee that Apple's going to charge. They include the Apple Care. Pretty good margins. What does that really mean? And does it include the insurance? So that if I break or lose my phone, I can actually get a new phone because I've insured it. Because in the past, when you get the next plan from AT&T, it actually, they build in the $6, $7 monthly fee for insurance.
So Apple Care gives you, if the phone breaks, it doesn't work, you go back to the Apple Genius Bar, give you a new one to take care of it, right? Doesn't include loss insurance, I believe. Right. So yeah, you're paying a few more bucks for less coverage, right? Now we come back to this loyalty and image thing, right? Because there's a lot of people will just go to any Apple store on a Saturday, it's packed. Try and make an appointment at a Genius Bar.
Can't do it here in Austin.
You can't do it in Austin. It takes a couple of days, right?
Used to be right in.
You can walk in. No, right.
3-day.
So that level of loyalty is clearly there. My argument would be that I think there's a lot of people willing to pay for just a couple of extra dollars a month for that Apple Care, etc. plan. Knowing they've got the relationship with Apple and it's easy and they go down there and they know that it'll work and they'll fix it for them. Going through the insurance company, through the carrier, putting in the claim, the paperwork, etc., etc. It's a different process.
I broke a phone. I filed a claim. I got put off to a third party. I went to the third party's website. I filled it out. I got an email back that wanted some unusual information. I just threw the phone in the drawer, and I still haven't followed up on it. So it was such a cumbersome process.
Yeah.
I haven't bothered with it. Whereas Apple, they just throw you a new phone. It's pretty amazing. Which brings me to the fourth bucket of money, which is being able to use these phones for replacement phones.
Yeah.
What's the economic impact to Apple, and how does it tie in back to that experience?
Okay, so two things. One is Apple needs replacement, refurbished phones for that Apple Care, right? Right now, they buy them, actually. So when you can trade in your phone, I mean, Apple, a lot of those go back to Apple, get refurbished and reused. Right. They can sell you a refurbished phone.
They have. I bought one.
Right. Okay, there you go. So we can get to the... Apple is short of refurbished iPhones, right? They need that supply. And the problem is actually compounded by selling more new iPhones. Because you sell more new iPhones, a percentage break, you need more replacements.
Right.
So the bigger this market gets for them, the more refurbs they need feeding in the back end. This program actually gives them their own supply of refurbs.
So the 4 buckets we talked about, which one do you think really drove this deal?
Oh, I think the 5th bucket.
Which one's that? Marginalizing the carriers?
Marginalizing. Now let's jump ahead a few more years.
Yep.
Right. I go to the Apple store to get my new phone. I pull up the phone. It's got a universal SIM in it. I turn it on. It says, which carrier do you want? AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, etc. I click on, well, Sprint. They want me to churn, right? Sprint. It says, here's 5 different plans. Which one do you want? Oh, you want a family plan? Click. Boom. Activated all through the phone. Or maybe there's a 5th option that says best network. Apple decides. Click. Apple's got my billing relationship. They've got my credit card in iTunes. Let them decide if it's AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile in that market that I should be using. In Austin, maybe it's AT&T. I go to Dallas, phone flips over to Verizon.
Now
Universal
they're in
SIM.
revenue business.
Now they're in recurring revenue business. And that's not far from what Google Fi is trying to do.
Yep.
And the original intention was much bigger than that, but that's the goal, is to get that best network where Google, Apple, etc. decides. So from a carrier point of view, you better build the best network.
Got it. Thanks for coming by today. No, we're going to jump over and talk a little bit about CCA and the upcoming meeting and your role with CCA. Thank you again for coming by today.
No problem. Good to see you.